Mr. President, we thank UN Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Ramiz Alakbarov, for his detailed report on the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, OPT, in the context of the implementation of UNSC Resolution 2334, as well as High Representative of the Peace Council for Gaza, Nikolay Mladenov, for his briefing. While the whole world is watching with horror the aggression unleashed by the United States and Israel against Iran, which has provoked the destabilization of the Middle East and world markets, the deteriorating situation in the OPT and, in particular, in the West Bank of the Jordan River, WBR, undeservedly remains in the shadows. Taking advantage of the regional escalation, the Israeli authorities and settlers have redoubled their efforts to curtail Palestinian rights in the West Bank. Since the beginning of the war, the number of road and checkpoint closures has increased by 80%, and additional troops have been deployed on Palestinian land. For military needs, 40 hectares of land were confiscated from local residents and municipalities. Since the beginning of the year, settlers have squeezed out 1.5 thousand residents from the West Bank. As a result of the actions of radicals and security forces, 29 Palestinians have been killed. Of particular concern is the increase in the issuance of weapons and permits to settlers in the West Bank and Jerusalem under the pretext of ensuring security, which leads to a further escalation of the situation. Israel is increasing the pace of settlement construction and expropriation in line with its policy of creating irreversible facts on the ground. Unprecedented decisions have been made to build up the E1 area and to revise the legal status of zones A and B in violation of the Oslo Accords signed and ratified by Israel. As a result of Israel's Operation Iron Wall, more than 33,000 Palestinian refugees have been evicted from the Jenin, Tulkarm, and Nur Shams camps, half of which have been demolished, calling into question the return of Palestinians there in the future. The closure of the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex to Muslims in the last days of the month of Ramadan under the pretext of security is openly provocative, which has become a real test for believers. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is also closed to believers. We demand that Israel preserve the historical and legal status quo of the holy sites of Jerusalem. Against this background, hate speech is actively flourishing. Accounts associated with the radicals in social networks urge not to miss the moment. While the attention of the international community is distracted by the Iranian story. The deputy mayor of Jerusalem, in a video message recorded against the backdrop of the demolition of the UNRWA headquarters, directly calls for the murder of all agency staff under the guise of religious beliefs. We categorically condemn this statement and call on the Israeli authorities to take all measures to prevent this from happening in the future. Unfortunately, such statements are not an exception, but only one of the manifestations of the aggressive and targeted campaign launched by Israel against UNRWA. Since October 7, 2023, 391 Baporites have been killed. The agency's buildings are being demolished. Legislation has been adopted aimed at closing UN-supported schools and hospitals and forcibly cutting off electricity and water supply. Anti-UNRWA disinformation is launched in the media. Despite all this, UNRWA continues to play the role of a non-alternative structure that provides comprehensive assistance to the Palestinians, both in the OPT and in neighboring Arab countries. The agency provides shelter to refugees, provides medical care, provides educational services, helps with essential goods and food. The mandate of this structure is of particular importance in the universally recognized international legal framework of the Middle East settlement, primarily in terms of assisting the Palestinians and ensuring their protection until they exercise their right to return. We note that many of the agency's staff have paid the highest price during the years of war in the Gaza Strip. We support the efforts of the UNRWA leadership, including the outgoing Commissioner General Federica Lazzarini. We call on donors to continue to provide all possible assistance to the agency, whose representatives admitted during a recent briefing that even a regional escalation does not affect UNRWA as much as its deteriorating financial situation. Mr. President, at the same time, the Gaza Strip was again on the brink of disaster. Since the conditional ceasefire in Gaza, October 10, 2025, more than 650 Palestinians have been killed and about 1,700 more wounded. The yellow line is gradually shifting to the west, and the territory not controlled by the Israelis is shrinking more and more. According to available information, the volume of incoming humanitarian aid has been reduced by 80 to 90%. Only one Kerem Shalom checkpoint is fully operational. The work of the Rafah border crossing was recently partially resumed for the movement of people. There is a shortage of drinking water, food, and medicine. There are no prospects for the imminent start of restoring civilian infrastructure. Israel is blocking the supply of construction materials. We call on Jerusalem to ensure safe and unhindered access in accordance with the well-known guidelines. In general, we have to admit that we are not seeing the implementation of Donald Trump's peace plan on Gaza, approved by UN Security Council, Resolution 2803. We understand that regional escalation does not contribute to the creation of favorable conditions for further steps towards the deployment of transitional structures in the enclave and the formation of the International Stabilization Force in Gaza, ISF. At the same time, the lack of progress in the implementation of the plan, including the lack of understanding on the ISS, the withdrawal of the Israeli military from the Gaza Strip, and the transfer of power to the Palestinian Authority, may lead to another round of armed conflict. The exclusion of Ramallah from the political settlement process, whose representatives were not invited to participate in the Peace Council, as well as such steps to undermine the position of the Palestinian Authority, such as Israel's withholding of Palestinian tax deductions in the amount of $4.5 billion, are disappointing and perplexing. USA, all of this undermines American peace efforts. We call on the mediators to make every possible effort to find a negotiated solution that takes into account the interests of all parties. Mr. President, Russia's position on the Palestinian-Israeli settlement is of a principled nature and is not subject to opportunistic changes. We stand for the resumption of the peace process on the universally recognized international legal basis, including the two-state formula, with the aim of creating an independent and viable state of Palestine within the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, coexisting in peace and security with Israel. As for the regional aggravation, we call on the parties to immediately cease hostilities. Russia is ready to assist in the search for ways to resolve the current escalation on a political and diplomatic basis. Thank you for your attention.